of the family is integral, and they have to be involved, and they have to be, the planning has to be youth and family driven and guided. Both of these are processes where we would ask community partners along with the youth and family come together for that purpose. In child welfare, they have a couple of processes. One is child group decision-making. And in this process, the family is a participant in a child welfare meeting. So there's information shared. The family has a time to have a private discussion. And then there's results in a jointly agreed upon plan between the family and child welfare, fairly commonly used. And then family team conferencing in child welfare is more of a wraparound approach where the family has a more critical central approach, role. And then in juvenile justice, we have family group conferencing. The offender and crime and victim and their families and supporters and community members are all involved. And this is a kind of a diversion approach, an alternative to formal court processing. In Ohio, we have various amounts of these. The most commonly available and or known are high fidelity wraparound and service coordination. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about service coordination, wraparound planning, cross-system help, if you will, one of the questions that's always on the table is, what goes into the plan? Oftentimes communities will say, it's great that we have a facilitated process, but it's only as good as the services and supports that we have available to help the family. So one of the things that we would ask you to be thinking about is, what does your community have? What are some of the gaps that you may want to shore up, both in terms of treatment as well as services across a developmental lifetime of that youth? Next slide. Thank you. When we're thinking about planning and treatment considerations, we want to be clear on what service, what you want the service to do and with whom. I like the discussion around, well, DBT and CBT is good for this. Maybe it's time to do some acceptance commitment therapy because of what's going on. And that's an important discussion. What kind of service dosage and intensity? How intensive does the service need to be? Do you want crisis response and availability? And the reason why we're asking all these questions is we want to design the right service fit, if you will, for the youth and the family need. What availability does the youth and family have to meet with system partners, which is a critical aspect of collaboration? And does the service focus, does it need to focus on safety issues and risk reduction? Some cautions when we do cross-system planning is more services are not necessarily better. Additional services may create an additional burden to the family. In football, we call it piling on, right? So if we go to a courtroom and the judge or magistrate orders a number of services, it's up to the family then to try to figure out, how am I going to meet all of those services? Intensive services for non-intensive youth can make things worse. Basing community response on available services rather than on the identified needs is not necessarily a good way to go. And then not involving the youth and family in the decision-making process. Support considerations. So when you're developing your plan, support everyone. Don't forget the family members. Don't forget the youth. Don't forget the supporters of the family. The goal is to re-energize the helping system and decrease family and helper burnout. Create youth and family safety net of resources and supports. Don't just rely on one resource and one support. So if Uncle Nick leaves for Texas and he was your best supporter of your child, you've really kind of lost everything. So you need to build a safety net of supports across life domains for that youth. Consider family, faith, and friends, school connections, and the community. Some resource considerations in your plan. Does the youth have basic needs that, and this youth might, what are the benefits? Do they have, will she be on Medicaid when she leaves? Will she have housing when she leaves? Where will she go? And I know those are the big questions, and frankly, they're the most difficult to resolve. In terms of pro-social activities, what access, we talked a little bit about what access she has and what interest she has, and that's certainly something to consider. Opportunities in the community, consider the use of family-centered service and support funds if the child is 0 to 21 for non-clinical supports and services for that youth. Lessons learned. When you're collaborating across systems, don't assume somebody else is taking the lead. Always be ready to reach out and do something first, do something that benefits the other system. You want to create a helping relationship. Go to them, hold meetings in the other system's space. So if you have trouble getting the school involved, go to the school. School meetings at a time that maximizes attendance. Maybe that's right after school lets out at 3:30. Understand each other's mandates, as we talked about earlier. I find one of the most important things in terms of cross-system collaboration is make sure you have credibility in that other system. So when I go to court, they want to see me instead of, oh, here he comes again, right? And including children's services and building credibility in the school. One of the hardest places to do cross-system collaboration is the school, because if you've been to one school, you've been to one school. And I would also say that regular and ongoing communication is pretty critical with other systems, because if we only communicate when there's a problem, they don't want to answer the phone. Some other lessons learned: to educate the other systems on impacts of mental health challenges, active oversight and management of risk and safety concerns, be clear on roles and boundaries. This will be available to you. And as I mentioned earlier, youth and families should be included at all meetings that concern them. And every interaction should be strength-based for them. You know, when we talked about this youth and family today, the question in my head was, what would it take for this youth to return to the community successfully, maybe initially somewhere else, and what role does the family feel that they could have in terms of a support role for this young lady? What will that connection look like that the family can do? And how do we support that? All right, did case application. One of the things I just wanted to say in terms of young adults with complex needs is we need to add, you know, do they have transportation? Do they have employment? Personal safety for young people, housing, health, benefits. We've got to add those domains to the planning process for them when we're planning for them. And just 2 more slides and we'll let you go. Dynamics of youth aging out of congregate care. It would not be uncommon for youth aging out of congregate care would be underdeveloped daily living skills like managing money and things like that. Little experience in work environments, lack of experience making decisions. What was really true with this young lady is, you know, where's her future's orientation and how do we start to develop that and support that? So this young person will need a lot of support moving forward, not only in mental health and other areas of health, physical health, but also in just daily living. Some of the key components of youth success. Thank you, Angela Lariviere. Stability in safe housing, healthcare, income, a consistent caring adult, that was mentioned a few times, positive peer support, support to set and accomplish goals, relief from trauma and treatment for trauma, and then hope and empowerment. So, you know, what I'm left with this young lady is, where is the hope? Who holds the hope for her? And then how do we transfer that hope back into the community? I just mentioned all of that, and that's it. So thank you very much for participating in today's System of Care Echo.